Cliff. The agenda has been accepted. Okay, the first item on the agenda is April 18th, 2024 meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments on that? Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 18th, 2020?
Moved.
Motion by Leah, second by Cliff. The motion passes. Point number 2 on the agenda tonight is the administrative site plan review, approval of minor changes to the Chelsea Square development. Scott, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, my staff report should.
Yeah. They basically just changed the layout and moved some of the buildings around, and it looks like it's a cleaner look for them. So I didn't have any other questions myself.
Yeah, they just moved it out of the electrical easement that was there and then and made it a straight line instead. But the fire district and our engineers have all reviewed it and are all okay with it.
Okay, so that one's good to go then.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Public comment for anything that's not on the agenda tonight? Okay, let's move on to, since there's no public comment for nothing that's on the agenda, we got unfinished business. This is continued planning commission review of the special use permit for SUP 2402 to allow a tow business and impoundment yard use at the vacant parcel F0622-100-037 Industrial District. Prior to the meeting, the township went out and they hired an engineer. I think everyone should have received it either today or got a copy of the engineering report. So everyone had a chance to run through it. And Tom, Sandy, have you read through it? Have it? Okay. Did you have I have a couple of comments, and I'll just jump to the conclusion, right? And it says, future operations may be subject to some environmental regulations, or the owner and operator are legally responsible for future releases of hazardous substances or polluting materials onto the ground. The PPP that specifies the use of automobile diapers for any and all leaking or potentially leaking vehicles is appropriate and expected to be an effective preventive measure. The PPP should be updated to include additional details to provide assurance that the policy will be implemented as intended. Based on the distance of the Sullivan Township wells to the subject property and the depth at which they were installed, the proposed special use of the subject property as a tow yard is not expected to significantly impact municipal water resources, provided that the best environmental practices are adhered to. The most significant environmental vulnerability appears to be the private well at 18651 Old US 12 because the groundwater is not protected by an overlaying clay layer. This was prepared by ECS, which I believe is the township's environmental consulting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to sort of lay out
Sure.
the meeting for us so that just for people, especially that weren't here at the last meeting, so they sort of know what we're talking about, because this is a continued public hearing that was our continued public review of the the proposed tow yard at 18651 West Old US 12. On March 21st, the planning commission conducted the public hearing concerning this project. And in April, actually on April 17th, the applicants resubmitted some requested information. The things that were requested that the planning commission had some concerns with were environmental concerns based on the use of the proposed project, the proposed property, and then the location of the township well. So they submitted a pollution prevention plan to us, and we went out to get a review of that plan from a environmental consultant. The township did not have an environmental consultant on staff. So under our policies, to hire a new consultant, we have to have township board approval of that consultant. So that is when we went out and looked for an environmental consultant. Actually, when I sent this to Midwest Consulting, because I had sent it to them first for review. There are engineering consulting firm. They suggested that we use an environmental consultant for the review. And then they also suggested this Andrew at ECS to do the review. So I had then contacted Andrew and asked for a proposed contract. He sent it to us and it went to the board at the last week's township board meeting, which was the first board meeting after the April 17th approval. So that's why I'm sorry, but we are getting this a little late. But instead of pushing the project down the road, I figured the review might be easy enough to look at. It is a 3-page project, which you could have some concerns with. But that was one of the items that we had requested at the March 21st, 2024 meeting. The second item that we had concerns, that the Planning Commission had concerns with, were landscaping of the project and how the project would be viewed from the I-94. So the applicant is here tonight, and I don't know, is Ted going to speak for you? Or I don't know how they're going to present, but they did. Yeah, so they did provide us with some information, and I have gone through in my staff report and shown you the information on the landscaping that they had provided. But I think it sounds like Mike wants to discuss the environmental first. And we did receive the report from ECS yesterday. And I'm sorry, I tried to forward it to you yesterday from my cell phone, and I don't know if you guys could have got it. So I did come in this morning at 7:30 prior to going to my other job and forwarded it from my computer here. And you got it. So y'all, I'm sure, have looked at this intently. And I think Mike is going to talk about some of his concerns with the report and with the project. But I believe those were the two main concerns with the project. So in my memorandum again, because I'm still sort of new with you guys, there is a, recommendation, which is sort of what the Planning Commission should do, open, review the additional information submitted, evaluate the proposal. And then I do provide you the example approval and denial motions in there. So if you do decide to make a determination, these are you to approve or deny the project, you could use those motions. If you want to add additional conditions, I have proposed 6 conditions on my original report, and then I did submit 2 additional suggested conditions based on the environmental review that we received from ECS. And then obviously you would add any additional conditions if you were going to approve with conditions. If you are going to deny the project, you would list the reasonings for denial and how I would try to use the original staff report, look at the standards of review, and then which standards of review it doesn't meet, and then why it doesn't meet those standards. So, or you could table the project like we did last time and ask for additional information. So those would be your 3 options to move forward. And I don't know if you want to start talking about the review or have the applicant present first, or.
I think the applicant can go ahead and present first.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. So.
I did on the PPP.
Yeah, you want to start with that?
my state name and everything, I apologize if I forget Robert's rules. Do I need to state on Bill Kearns?
Yeah.
Okay. Bill Kearns, the applicant for the conditional use permit that we're discussing. When this came up 2 months ago, I'd called around to my industry peers, towers throughout the state, past towing association presidents, tried to gather what was going on out there and what others are seeing, to see if I'm unique in this. There wasn't a lot of data out there. What I got out of it was the diapers, as we call them, the disposal pads that we put underneath the cars. That's the only thing I really got out of some of my industry peers, and doing some research. It sounded good. We bought a couple, started implementing them to see if it's possible. We've done half a dozen cars so far at my Manchester yard. It seems on our side of things that it works good. I was excited to see that the environmental firm that I didn't choose by chance backed us up, that they seemed to think what we were doing was good. I also, when I was doing that, it dawned on me that my shop's been enrolled with the Manchester shop. It is a collision shop and towing yard through the Washtenaw County Pollution Prevention Plan for the entire time I've been open for 29 years. So to me, I thought it's a no-brainer. I should ask them people. So I talked to Carissa Renberg down there. She knew of our shop, and we're in good standing and everything's been good. She had to take it to her supervisor. She says, do you store batteries there? I said, no. Well, do you drain oil there? I said, no. And well, do you, store a few, jugs of or something, trying to validate. And I said, no, but I jokingly, I did say I could, if it would get you to come out and inspect us, because I think a third party inspecting us is a good thing. She checked with her supervisor and they said, yes, the tow yard we could enroll it into the program and have them come inspect us. Initially, it's annually. If they find us clean enough, in Manchester, we've been reduced to every 3 years. We do paperwork once a year, and every 3 years they come pay us a visit. So I think that's where, and then I also drew up, there's gonna be some training and some implementation as far as my employees and management staff, as to making sure, as that environmental firm pointed out, I need to make sure that it's done properly and that someone oversees that it's being done properly. So, we're still tightening some of that procedure up. I think that's what I have as far as the PPP portion of this.
Yeah, Ted Hirsch with Midwestern Consulting, we're the civil consultant for the project. So yeah, the only thing I had to add to that was that in ECS's report, they did, like Bill mentioned, agree with the BMP of using the vehicle absorption pads, and that it was an effective form of pollution prevention. The one thing that they did, or the couple of things that they did ask for, is just a little bit more detail in the internal plan that the business developed, just to add a little bit more specificity to it as to how it gets implemented, when and where and how, and who makes sure that and keeps records of all those instances. So that was the only thing I was going to touch on, in addition to what Bill had said, and in regard to the vehicle diapers. So yeah, I think that would be the plan, is to just go back and button up a little bit, add some more detail to that pollution prevention plan for the business, and make sure that ECS is on board with that.
It does seem to be that we're kind of leading a little bit. I did call Metro Dispatch, who we have our contract with the state police and Washtenaw County Sheriff, and I talked to the quartermaster who handles towing. And I said, hey, in the future, I'd like to see a line item where I might be able to charge for this. And I'm not trying to turn it into a financial enrichment, but I do, I said, hey, this is something new. Nobody in Washtenaw County's encountered this yet. So it's kind of cool that I think we are setting some precedent here, and I hope it's a good one. And I think it makes sense. And he was, good with it too. We do have an allowance already in the contract for $45, and truthfully, I think that'll cover what we're gonna have into it. So I think it's a good thing all in all.
Okay. Anything else from, anyone have questions for the applicant while we're up here?
Yeah, if there's no questions, I forgot, I was just gonna touch on one more thing on the environmental report. There was mention of an existing well log at 18651 Old US 12, which is the actual address of the subject property. And which was interesting because with the survey information we have, we didn't have any existing well, but looking back at the records, I was able to find an abandoned well record. So it looks like in 2005, the well that was on site was abandoned.
So this log they're talking about is an abandoned well?
I actually printed out a bunch of copies of this if you guys would like to see them.
No, I'll take your word for it. I don't doubt you.
So the one that is in the report is the actual well log when it was drilled.
Okay,
And that was in 1969, I think it was, and this one is from 2005 when it was abandoned. And with the,
is it capped, I take it?
right, yep. It was cut 2 feet below grade.
Interesting.
And with the proposed project, we would be connecting to the municipal water across the street, so there would be any new well.
Hmm. Interesting.
That one had us going for quite a while this afternoon on the phone saying 18651. Hey, that's our property. I can't find no well there.
Hmm.
Ted did some research and he was able to,
You'd think the engineer would have figured that out. Hmm. Interesting point. Well, thanks for pointing it out. And it's capped and it's really not vulnerable because it's it's there.
it was done by Cribley, who I personally think is a pretty good company.
Yeah, no, there's probably one of the only ones around too, so. But okay,
Are you gonna talk about what you are proposing with the landscaping?
Yeah, we can certainly do that if there's no more environmental
Well, there,
questions.
yeah, they might have more, but I would
Yeah,
wrap up
so-
your guys' presentation on the 2 items that we.
Yeah, so after the first meeting, that was identified as kind of the second point of discussion as far as things that could be addressed and improved on the original plan that was submitted. So Mr. Pacheco and I and our team, we kind of went back and forth about kind of looking at what the existing screening is, because I know there was some concern about screening views from I-94 and towards the storage yard and things like that. And we pulled up some kind of precedent pictures from just from Google Street View showing the kind of the existing dense row of vegetation along the south border, and then it kind of creeps up along the west border as well. So the thing that Mr. Pacheco had suggested and we implemented was to kind of tighten up our grading limits so that we're making sure that we're maintaining all of that, as much existing vegetation along the south and the coming up the west property line as we could. There's a couple of images in that staff report that show what that looks like, kind of looking back from eastbound 94 towards the property. And the circle obviously kind of represents the southwest corner of the property. I'm sorry, this is from westbound looking back, but and then the line on that first image kind of represents where the property line is. So there's some existing trees on the adjacent property. With the proposed plan, there's additional landscaping and a privacy fence proposed as well to kind of complete that screening from I-94 views.
what kind of trees are you or screening are you talking about? Because typically, you know, in November, the leaves fall, right? So the screening, the vegetation screening will go away.
Yeah, I think I'd have to double check our landscape plan, but I'm pretty sure they're evergreens.
Pardon?
Pretty sure they're evergreens.
Evergreens. So you'd put evergreens along in place of a masonry wall, is that correct?
No, the plan that we submitted has a privacy fence
Yep.
in addition to the new tree plantings. So the reference to the masonry wall in the staff report, I think, is a potential suggested alternate to the privacy fence that was proposed in the plan. Although
I guess when I looked at it, it wasn't terribly clear to me. So I thought was, as I understood it, was just a vegetation boundary, but you're saying there'll be a fence and vegetation?
Right.
Okay.
So on the plan, we had proposed at least 80% opaque privacy fence, 6 foot high along the west border. In addition to the new landscaping, the south border was gonna be chain link, the south and the east border. And I'm talking the border of the storage lot. So there was fencing proposed around all 3 of the major sides.
Mhm.
And then as you get to the north side of the storage lot is where it kind of creeps into the parking lot and the office. So on the north side there is where we had proposed some masonry kind of screen walls to give a little bit better view from old US 12 in the front.
I do want to mention that this isn't not site plan review. They did not submit for site plan review. You can require them to have a masonry wall at this time by approving this plan that doesn't approve a fence or anything to do with the structures, other than it will be in the similar location to where it is shown on this plan. What you're approving tonight is the special use permit for the
understood.
use of a tow yard, just to keep it clear that they did not apply for a preliminary site plan review with their so even if they show a fence on this and you decide at site plan review that you want a masonry wall, it could be. So, but if you decide tonight that to meet the special use permit standards, a masonry wall is required, you won't be able to go back and change that.
Okay.
Because it's a condition of your special use permit that you have already approved moving forward. So that's where this gets tricky, because usually you would have a preliminary site plan with a special use permit. So,
And that may be my fault because I don't do this for a living, but being my second go at this, I didn't want to spend any more money. I wanted somebody to say it's okay to do a tow yard and then we'll figure out how we want it to look. Mr. Hirsch really said, Bill, we want to do it all together. And I was like, I let me know if I can do a tow yard, then I'll build something that you like. So I wasn't doing it to trick anyone or just trying to hopefully save a little money if you decide to tell me no. I hope you don't, but
yeah, if you did want to deal with that at site plan review, you could state in your special use permit that a masonry wall would be required unless at site plan review a landscape plan and an alternative was approved by the planning commission.
Okay.
my only thoughts on the masonry walls, I don't know if it would add any more screening than we already have. I question if it's any more secure. I think putting a ladder against a masonry wall might be easier to scale it than that chain link fence when I was a kid trying to climb over it. But is cost, you know, I did call Brisky Construction and say, how much am I talking? I don't do this for a living. I don't know. I said, give me roughly 600 feet is, you know, a little bit north of 100,000. That was just a big pill for me to swallow, that I'd hope I could do it with some green berming or something with greens, but I think would look better than a poured masonry wall. And don't get me wrong, it'll save me some money. So I got dual motives there, but. And I don't know if it's fair to me to talk about, I asked you a property before the meeting started that.
Yeah, no, it's
I
past mistakes.
mentioned it last time around. There's a business that was just recently built, and every time I get on 52, I think I look in the backyard and my wife and I talked on the way here. I don't like how it looks. I know talk's cheap, but that's not what I'm gonna build. So.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
We're approved and we're good. Thank you.
So. Okay, so Cliff, you weren't here for the last one, but we had gone through the standards of review already. I don't know, Tom, do you think there's value of going through that again?
I think all we have is just those few sticking points.
All right,
You know, we already went through standards review.
yeah,
I think all we have is just a couple sticking points is
all right.
where we need to.
Court-
with the Direction.
Yeah, Courtney. Andy, you okay with,
I'm happy to hear that there's potential oversight, annual oversight by Washington County, by the County Environmental Health Division. And I appreciated the information that came in the environmental consulting report as well. And I think that using diapers on potentially leaking vehicles is a great idea.
okay. Leah, your thoughts?
I'm fine with it, but I think if we're gonna hopefully not make him do some major landscaping there, his next door neighbor, that is a site from 94.
No, I understand, but
And Brian's service that
no, I understand, but at the same time, we have an opportunity to change the direction, right? So I don't, just because the neighbor looks like, a junkyard,
Well,
we don't need to approve more junkyards, right?
I think it's gonna look that way.
No, Cliff, based on your observations, you have anything you'd like to add?
I think these suggested conditions of approval based on the environmental review provided by Scott, I think sound reasonable from
Okay,
my perspective.
okay, so Scott, we're gonna look at the original supplemental approval motion, okay?
Right?
It's up to you. The public hearing was at the last item. If the
Yeah.
planning commission wanted to reopen the public,
Hey, we could
Hearing.
reopen it if you, we're,
you would
Yeah.
make a motion to reopen the public hearing and
we make a motion to reopen public hearing. Supported by Tom, seconded by Courtney. You have comments, sir?
you can go, yeah, up there.
You.
Yep.
And I second him, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Mike Van Gore, a resident on Spruce Run Drive. Thank you for reopening the public hearing. Otherwise I would have spoken at the beginning. I agree with Mr. Kearns as far as his approach and expense. I'm sympathetic with that. And I would just like to start out by saying that I think this is the appropriate zoning district for this use. And based on that, I would like to say, I think this is an appropriate project for this location. I agree with like the environmental approach. It would have been nice to be able to have a review of that and have that documentation available to be able to talk about it. But, that is one thing that I obviously is concerned has been addressed. Certainly the traffic at the off ramp on Old US 12 is probably still a concern for everybody, but I think that's a bigger issue and an ongoing issue. Since this is a special use and, conditions and whatever, I guess one of the bigger things I really wanted to talk about tonight is the fact, about the light fixtures in the proposal. Every one of these light fixtures is actually on the approved published list from Dark Sky International. And I don't know if that was by intent or just part of the consultants' templates that they always use, whatever. But I wanted to say thank you because I realized these lights are probably going to be on most of the time, at least, for security, some of them are going to be on, but all the 20-foot poles, all the wall packs, they're approved by Dark Sky International. And I think this project proves that you don't need to go through some special expensive light fixture or some extravagant lighting design in order to comply with that. And I know I've spoken about that in the past to this group and to the board. There's been a presentation and I think, this is a good benchmark. And I would really like for our township to see some sort of a dark sky lighting ordinance that we can, use this project to point to and say, look, this works and it doesn't cost a whole lot more to make it work for everybody. So, it would be great if this lighting design could be a condition of the approval. I don't know if that's part of what happens tonight or if that's part of site plan approval later on. But I really just wanted to, speak to the fact that I think this is the appropriate location for this use. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we'll close public hearing. We'll go and go back to review of the special use permit SUP 24-002. Okay, so it looks like there's general consensus amongst the board members that this is a project we can move forward with, but we need to look at the conditions that we think are appropriate. So Scott has prepared his recommendation for approval. I think if we look at number 3 on the masonry wall, Scott, if you want to give Amanda a copy, she's not having to crunch on notes, right? It says the masonry wall should be used on all sides of the vehicle storage area to better secure and screen the area from off-site. And then you want to put terminology in there to allow us flexibility with the,
Yeah, I would say, unless it is determined through site plan review, that a lesser measure is appropriate.
okay. Is everyone okay with that terminology?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and add that in. And then on the environmental, we need to have something in regards to, I don't know if this is the right time to ask this or not, but I'd like Robert Thal to confirm Washtenaw County is the appropriate agency for reviewing environmental standards, given EGLE is responsible for the Clean Water Act. So I just want to get confirmation that we have the correct regulatory authority in place.
I mean, I think that's covered here because it's including but not limited to, and then list the agencies. So I think that would cover any subsequent or any other agencies that might exercise jurisdiction.
Yeah, but I just want,
Actually, in my condition of approval, it is a broader, even broader statement.
Yeah.
It's just the towing operation on the site. The applicant shall comply with all state, federal, and local regulations. But I think you want to see, I want to see what exactly you're looking for, Thal. Where,
I just want,
Which-
I need to get, who's actually the right agency that regulates the water tower, right? And any sort of potential threats to them, just to make sure we don't miss out on something. And based on what I found, it was EGLE. I don't know if,
where on their report does it talk about it that you're looking for the?
this is my own research. I didn't see it in the environmental research report. If you look at, they were talking, the applicant had talked about using Washtenaw County, right, as
Well, they're using them as a inspection agency for the pollution prevention plan,
right.
not for the water tower review. So the water tower review, the review that we had on the water tower was from ECS.
I understand
doing the
that.
well review.
And my question is, number one, were they the right ones from a regulatory perspective? I don't know, maybe we take this offline and we can talk about this during the site plan review, but I just want to get confirmation. We got the right agency involved. Okay.
Well, it's,
And then
so you can propose a condition that Rob Thal review the environmental consultants review to verify accuracy.
okay, that, I think,
But the rest of the planning commissioners don't need to approve that proposed
Right.
condition if they don't want to.
right. So I'll just give you a little background. So the Federal Clean Water Act is regulated by the state of Michigan, not Washtenaw County. And so when I looked at the report that came from here, they basically stated they gave it a cursory review. They didn't go into a lot of what I'll call detail. And I just want to make sure that we've got the right people reviewing it. You know, given the cost of the water tower and potential risk, right? It's just, you know, to be safe,
I think that makes sense.
you know, that's.
It seems us down the line.
Yeah. And that's just get confirmation from him, so we can add that as a condition. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. The other one, Mr.
What exactly is the condition so that I can add it on?
Okay.
Verify with Rob Thal that one,
The agency regulating the water tower does not have any input into storage yards, towing facilities within within a certain range of a water tower.
that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Verify with Rob Thal that. There.
And then the other one I had here, in regards to the pollution prevention program, I think we need to have some sort of formalization as to what that looks like. I looked in the handbook, all I could really see was one page in there. So I'd like to see a formalized, is it already in there?
I have suggested a condition.
I'm looking for. it.
It's on that page that was at the dais tonight. I can read it out loud for you because the applicant hasn't heard it, because it's just proposed
Is it
tonight.
on page 7?
No, it's on a little one sheet of paper that was up at the dais tonight
Oh, I'm
along
sorry, I
with
didn't see
the
that.
environmental. I have another one here if you need
Or is
one.
it in here? Okay.
These are the two suggested conditions that I had based on the ECS review. One was for tow, I already stated, for towing operations on the site, the applicant shall comply with all state, federal, and local regulations that apply. You don't have to state those statements. Obviously, that's a requirement of anything. They have to comply with anything, any of those, but I just thought we would put it in there just to, as a heads up, comply with all of these regulations. And the second one has to do with the PPP, which is the pollution prevention plan. The applicant shall update, and I think Ted talked about this in his report.
Yeah, no, he did.
Also, the applicant shall update the proposed pollution prevention plan as suggested in the environmental review report to include the following: where and when diapers will be applied. For example, you would apply absorbent diapers to vehicles that have leaked or have potential to leak before the vehicle is brought onto the site. Schedule for inspections. Who would be responsible for the inspections? How the disposal records are maintained for the site. A time limit for storage of vehicles on the site. A statement that any damaged vehicles will be stored only on paved areas with curbing. A statement that no vehicles will be repaired on the site. A statement that no fuel will be stored in underground storage tanks on the site. A requirement that the site continue to participate in the pollution prevention program through the Washtenaw County Environmental Health Division. So those are all the, in the ECS report, all the items that he listed on page 2 of the report.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Yeah, this kind of covers what I was looking at. Go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that with the condition pertaining to updating the pollution prevention plan,
Mhm.
that we have an opportunity, because just like everyone else, we just got that report yesterday. We'd like an opportunity to kind of coordinate with ECS and make sure that we're addressing all of their concerns properly. So I don't know if
I actually forgot to read that portion. It says, once the updated PPR has been submitted, it shall be reviewed and approved by staff and the environmental consultant prior to issuance of a zoning permit on the project.
Okay.
So we'll send you'll update it and then we'll send it back to this environmental consultant for review. So you'll have to work with them to get it.
Yep, and I just wanted to make sure that all of those, like for instances that you listed, aren't going to be part of the condition.
Yes, it would be.
Those were the things that they stated in their report, so you don't think that those would be needed. So we
we'd
could
like the
say
opportunity to
unless
discuss those
ECS
things
decides
with
that they're not
Hmm.
appropriate.
I think we can leave it as is. I'm okay with it.
I think Ted's concern is that he would be able to find a environmental consultant that says that maybe this isn't needed, and he could talk ECS out of needing it.
No, I wouldn't expect to consult another consultant. Just have open discussion between us and ECS about the suggestions that they had, right? That weren't necessarily requirements from their report, but suggestions. So I'd like to have at least an opportunity to have open discussion with them to see if those, all of those things we both determine are good to go and Mr. Kearns is amenable to, then happy to provide, or if there's some
What gives you the most heartburn on this list?
I suppose it would be the hard surfacing, the curbing and concrete.
Yeah, because for me, that gives me heartburn, the fact that you would opt out of it. And for me, the concrete's important and the curbing. If you don't want to do that, then I've become less enthused with the project.
Are you proposing that the storage yard not be paved? Is that,
The plans always showed it to be bit millings,
To be, I'm sorry, say what that was?
bituminous millings.
Oh, bituminous.
And I
So
guess it was our,
for me, I'm not familiar, I have struggled with the, what I'll call a loose gravel or a porous material in the yard.
I don't know when I jump in, so.
No, go ahead, that's fine.
One of my concerns, I'll be honest, one's cost, we'll be honest, I won't try to fool him, but secondary is upkeep and maintenance, to have a wrecked vehicle with the wheel broke off and putting it on some type of hard surface. Cement's probably the best, pavement's certainly difficult. In the hot summer, I think it's gonna not hold up real well. I can back that up a little bit. Is it a false sense of security as much as cement cracks? Are we really, do we really think it's creating a buffer, or should we be trying to maintain the fluids? I'm certainly open to discussion. Those are my couple that I'd like to discuss with the environmental firm. Are they that staunch on it? Do they really have data to back up that it's necessary? Or if the other practices are put in, would they be open to that? That, they're the professionals in it. So.
I think our other thought was that, again, similar to the approach to submit something more specific to the use rather than a full site plan, was that our understanding is we would have opportunity, because it, like I said, we've been showing bit millings on the plan, understanding that that would be something that needs a variance. So it was our expectation
haven't even looked at it
we would,
No.
because it's not site plan review. Haven't even seen that.
that's what I mean,
Yeah.
that we expected to have that opportunity to
Yeah.
discuss that during the actual site plan review. And if it
Yeah.
was determined that, no, you need to hard surface it through that process, that's where we would figure that out.
And I think it's reasonable. You should be able to talk to this consulting group or whoever, whatever it's called. Just from like a policy writing standpoint, yeah, it needs to be verified before we put it into a requirement. That's my opinion anyway.
So what we can do is we can change that condition, if you guys are all up to it, to the applicant shall work with ECS on a proposed pollution prevention plan as suggested in the environmental review, and then have them have that requirement as have the pollution prevention plan as a requirement of site plan approval. So they have to have it approved by us, by the planning commission, as part of the site plan approval. Work with ECS on the proposed pollution as suggested in the environmental review to be approved by the planning commission during site plan review. And then just get rid of all of the rest of the stuff. So we would have to have an approved, prevention, PPP, for you to approve the final site plan approval of the project. So, and you guys are going to then figure out what that means to you. Because they're going to work with ECS. ECS is going to give us a review of whatever they come up with. And their review, more than likely, because Ted is going to sit there working with them, is going to say that it's fine. And then you guys are going to determine if that PPP is fine with you.
Mm.
At least we have an opportunity to discuss it with them and
Yep.
options.
And you might, what they might do on the paved areas, we don't know, they might just have you say, if a car has a diaper on it, you're going to put it on a paved, and you would have to have some sort of paved portion of your site. Other cars can go on other portions of the site.
Right, exactly. And that's,
So,
we're
yeah.
hoping for the opportunity to figure out that nuance to how that solution actually
correct.
gonna be provided.
So, well, yeah, it does make sense to flesh out all the intricacies of the project between you and ECS. It sounds like a good plan. And then the PC would obviously have final approval of that project
Hmm.
if this goes to site plan review. Does that help, Mike, or?
I'm just thinking about it, right? Tom, what do you think? This is a committee, right? I mean,
I think all we're doing is for the special use.
Yep.
This could be covered at site plan review. If it's gonna be cement, blacktop, limestone, whatever. I guess that's how I feel. They should be able to talk,
no,
you know, have a discussion. And if it makes sense,
And we're gonna have to review it against our code also. So, because it sounds like our code requires this area to be paved anyway, so
right.
that could be
that
a
could be
problem. Yeah.
Courtney, it sounds like you're okay with it then?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Cliff,
Yeah, but
it's fine. Leah, you're fine with it? Sandy, you're fine with it? Okay. Okay, one other condition that I would talk to Mr. Kern about earlier is that he would come in on an annual basis and report to the township board. Any sort of change, given the whole nuances of the electrical vehicle industry, any sort of changes that are coming forward in regards to community protections, safety standards, things of that nature, that they're working with, and this would be in conjunction with CAFA, to come in and just say these are the risks with particularly with the hybrid energy systems that are out there, electric. And then these are the things we're doing to help maintain safety for the community. And it's basically to come in every couple of years and give a report. So, the township board is apprised of the activities that are going on there. So I think, is everyone okay with that?
I think that'd be fair to ask.
Yeah,
He would love to come in and give us an update.
You want to do it biannually instead of
every 2 years or so, yeah. Yeah. No, I just think with the technology changing, right, and
Yeah.
and not knowing how the fires with lithium batteries and that, since we'll have a facility out here that potentially has those type of risks, I think it's important that the
And
township.
we have talked about this a few times with CAFA, and they're in constant presentations about this.
Right.
So, because they've been in here a few times because the Proving Grounds is doing some interesting things over there. So, they obviously have training all the time on this stuff. The fear is that looking at Sandy is she's going to be the one that has to watch this presentation during her and have longer, I would look at this one here too, but he's a short timer, so I'm not even
Yeah.
gonna address that.
No, it's just a report is
Yeah.
all I'd ask for. I wouldn't necessarily, it's just to make sure.
Oh, just
community
a
safe.
report that can go in the packet.
Yeah, just the
So
community.
not a presentation.
Correct.
All right, so a biannual report on biannual report
On safety measures
safety standards.
Safety standards.
measures.
for evolving transportation technology. What do you think, Cliff? What else did I have on my list? We got the pollution control plan. Oh, I think the bonding was talked about in, I don't know if this makes sense to talk about insurance and bonding in here, or, because I mean, I know the report from the consultant ECS said there was liability, I think imposed by the state, but I don't know if we want to put a statement in here about adequate, insurance and or bonding for the facility in the event of a disaster. That was one of the questions I had in mind. Any thoughts on that, Scott?
I'm just looking for where they talked about it, just to see exactly what they said.
Talking about the first paragraph, the conclusion.
Yes.
Where is it?
First
On
paragraph of the
Page
conclusion.
3.
Inclusion.
Yep. First bullet.
Wait, are we in the ECS report?
Yep, page 3.
Page 3, paragraph 1.
It's the conclusion.
Under conclusions,
Oh, under conclusion.
the first.
All right, I was hearing inclusion, sorry.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't mind putting that in, site plan approval.
Yeah, there. Is mine different than everybody else?
So.
Can somebody read it to me?
Yeah, future operators may be subject to some environmental regulations. However, the owner and operator are legally responsible for any future releases of hazardous substances or polluting materials onto the ground.
Right.
Right.
So I thought we were talking about a bond.
Well, no, I'm just saying, but is this something where we would require bonding for having the insurance to cover this?
If you're interested in that, you could probably kick that to site plan review and you could bring that up with Rob Fall.
Oh, site plan, okay.
Yeah, it's not a requirement of our code, so yeah, we'd have to put it in as a requirement of our site plan approval.
Okay,
That there'd be some sort of security bond put into place if there's any future hazards. So
Okay.
it's probably not 100% uncommon to do on sites like dumps and things like that. To have some sort of bond, just in case there is a large spill.
Right.
And then the applicant leaves the country,
Right.
because he doesn't want to clean up the site.
That moves to Adrian.
So it would be something we could, ask, Rob Thal about during
Okay.
site plan review.
Okay, so let's maybe put that on for a follow-up. then. Okay,
I'll put that in my notes
Okay.
to send an email to Rob.
okay, so that was all my notes I had for this. Has anyone else got any questions or comments? So to be perfectly legal, do we need to read this entire document? For this approval motion?
So some people read it, some people just read the portions that you've changed.
Yep.
I would read it out loud. And it's not that long. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 conditions.
I'll need help
So-
on some of the other ones, so.
I have them all written down,
all
so
written
I can go through the conditions if you want to just read the motion, and I will read the conditions.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna walk through this example approval motion. Planning Commission motion to approve the special use permit SUP 2401 to allow vehicle tow yard use of the vacant property at 16851 Old US 12 because as discussed at tonight's Planning Commission meeting and as presented in the Planning Commission staff report, proposed use with the following conditions will meet the standards of section 3643 1 through 10,
1 through 7.
1 through 7.
And then I'll read the conditions for you. Condition 1, site plan review and approval of the project will be required under chapter 20, article 2. All regulations will be reviewed as a part of the site plan review. The future site plan submitted should be similar, although minor changes will be required to the draft site plan submitted for review as part of the special use permit. The applicant will preserve the existing landscaping outside of the graded area on the south portion of the proposed development to provide screening of the project from I-94. The masonry walls shall be used on all sides of the vehicle storage area to better secure it and screen the area from off-site unless it is determined through site plan review that lesser measures would be appropriate. The future lighting on site shall be shielded and directed towards the ground and should not be installed in such a manner that no illumination source is visible beyond all property lines. These things might be things that you might not want in there because we could deal with those at site plan review also.
They're fine.
And it looks like they've already done that with the lights that they've put in. The proposed light shall only be on during normal business hours of operation. Secure lighting, maybe security lighting may be on motion sensors for after hour use. All required federal, state, local review and approval will be required for this project prior to issuance of a site plan or building permit, including but not limited to Washtenaw County Road Commission, Washtenaw County Environmental Health Department, Township Engineering Consultant, Chelsea Area Fire Authority, and Chelsea Area Construction Agency. That should be revised to state prior to issuance of a building permit, not site plan. And then number 7 is similar to number 6. So we might want to just get rid of it. It's the towing operation on the site. The applicant shall comply with all state, federal, and local regulations. It sort of said that in number 6 also. So it's a duplicate. The applicant shall work with ECS on the proposed pollution prevention plan as suggested in the environmental review. This pollution prevention plan will be approved by the Planning Commission during site plan review. Verification with Rob Thal. if there is, if there are any agencies required to review the project,
Mhm. State agencies.
state agencies. And the applicant will present a biannual report on safety measures for evolving transportation technologies to the township board.
Correct. And that's fine.
Yep.
Okay,
So the ones that I would suggest you might want to remove are number 7 because it's a duplicate. And then you might consider the lighting just be addressed during site plan approval unless you want it during this phase. The only reason that I had included it in there during special use permit phase is because there's more discretion during special use permit on the ability to alter from what your code allows. So one of the things that your code doesn't address is that lights be turned off at night and things like that. So on security cameras, the reason that I suggested that is because there is a applicant in my staff report. It's to preserve the uphill neighbors dark night sky.
Hmm.
So because if those lights remain on all night, he's gonna have to look at that all night.
So, we have students at the University of Michigan who are writing a dark sky ordinance for us. And we're not sure when when we're gonna see it, but many of us attended presentations with people about dark skies. So we can look forward at some point in time to having a dark sky ordinance. But thank you so much for thinking about that ahead of time.
I just soon leave it in as it is.
Yeah, their lights that they proposed are all shielded and directed towards the ground. They're very direct lighting. But I would suggest that they turn them off when the business is closed. So I know we've had a problem here in Sylvan in the past with the lights on the back of steel. And the neighbor that is directly to that, because he left them on all night, and his master bedroom is probably about 100 feet from that light. And it was very bright in there. I believe they are turning them off now at night, so.
I think we leave it in as is.
All right,
I'm fine with that. Then remove 7, correct?
remove 7.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Supported by Sandy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the motion passes. All right.
I make one other suggestion, which is that if you add any additional shrubbery or trees, that they be native Michigan. Okay,
So during site plan review, I will do a thorough review of the landscape plan and we'll work together
Yep.
on it, because I did see the proposed vegetation that you're using right along the fence is pretty low flying. We probably want something
Yeah, a little paper here.
bigger. It's a mint julep junipers, which are, they spread, but they don't get really tall. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the next subject on the agenda, new business. And this is the zoning text amendment, ZTA 24-002. To amend the zoning regulations, municipal code chapter 30 zoning ordinance regarding setbacks, floor area and lot coverage on non-conforming small lots within the low-density residential zoning district. LR to amend the zoning regulations to allow mechanical equipment to encroach into required setbacks when appropriate, and to amend the zoning regulation to allow for non-conforming structures to be reconstructed with certain criteria. So Scott,
Yes,
you've prepared a nice little packet here. You've got the project history.
yep.
I think everyone had a chance to read this. I think I'm gonna open it up for public comment though at this point for anyone that'd like to talk about it. Steve, I think you probably would. So do I need officially to have a motion to open up for public comment?
No.
No, I
No.
don't think so. Okay.
I think Steve's gonna be right.
Those of you that don't know me, my name's Steve Kiss. I've lived out on Kavanaugh Lake for almost 40 years. I've been on the ZBA for 15 years and chair for the last 10. And one of the things when an applicant applies for a variance, the neighbors, there's two concerns they always have. One, are they gonna move their house closer to my property line? Very important. This house has been there for years and years and years. You know how far they've been away. Somebody bought their house because it's that far away and they know they're not gonna make it closer. The second thing is for the house will not be blocking any views. That means going closer to the lake so you can't see the lake or whatever other view that you wanted to see out there. Those are the two biggest concerns. My neighbors and fellow lake residents, I've read in other township ordinances, and these are similar to some of the other township ordinances. I remember, I think Scott and I, 10+ years ago, were looking at doing some kind of a lake ordinance stuff, and there's all kinds of calculations and everything. And he moved away to greener pastures. Now he's back to other pastures. And so we kind of let that ball drop. But just because other townships have similar ordinances, doesn't mean we have to follow them. We should do what's right for us. Not copy the other ordinances that Dexter Township or some other things other people have going out there. Part of the reason people buy their homes, they know their neighbor's X amount of feet away, and currently we have a 20-foot setback. You're not getting any closer. You know that when you bought the house. You should expect that to be in the future. You shouldn't expect someone to say, okay, all of a sudden that house could be 5 feet from my property line. I don't think that's right. I'm looking at a couple concerns and the specifics here that I have. One is in the floor area ratio. It seems I think the floor area ratio should be 30%, whether your lot's 1 acre, less than 1 acre. What makes no sense to me is we're putting hard limits on this. So a house with 0.99 acres can build a house 50% larger than a house that has 1 acre, based upon the way this is written. That's not right. 30% is 30%. It's been going out here. The ZBA has been allowing that as a hard number for years and years and years. And if you go around the lake, I think you can build a reasonable house. So I think 30% should be a standard for everything. Lot coverage. It has 20%. Some of these homes out here that are already existing are probably a little bit more than 20% lot coverage. I don't think we should force people who have a house to make it smaller. If you already are up there and you have a footprint on that house, you should be able to use that footprint to rebuild. And floor area ratio, somewhere between 20 and 25. I don't have a hard feeling on either one. Now, the setback issue, I have a real problem with. 5-foot minimum setback if you have a lot of 40 feet or less. If you want to rebuild a house and your house is 4 feet away or so, I think you should be able to be allowed to build it on that footprint. But if you have 50 foot of a house, I know 15-foot aggregate, but 50 foot of frontage, we shouldn't allow people to come 5 feet away. he could build an adequate house on a 50-foot frontage and using the existing setbacks out there, because we really don't have any open lots anymore. You have houses on every 155 or so houses out there. They're all built. Keep it the way it is. Don't try and expand them. What we should do is have the people go up instead of imposing on their next door neighbors to come closer. Put the second story up. I don't like the idea of 5 feet away. 10 feet minimum if you have a 60-foot or less grader. I'm not sure what the problem has been with 20 feet unless your house has already encroaching. The ZBA has never let houses further encroach to a neighbor's yard. But 20 foot's reasonable. If it's already 10 foot, then keep it 10 foot. But if you're 20 feet away, don't go to 10 feet or 5 feet. Makes no sense to me. It's just causes people to be not neighborly. Those are some of the biggest concerns I have. The other thing that I have is, I agree to update all that. I think it's a good idea to update all this stuff when houses are damaged and that. But the other thing that I think we need to include, I think Scott and I talked about this at the ZBA meeting, was the line of sight. And that's one of the vulnerabilities we have in our ordinances now, where you only have to be 50 feet from the lake. And there's a number of places there where houses are much further back. So if somebody wants to follow the law, they could go 50 foot away from the lake and people on both sides would not be able to see it. Scott had a good idea of doing an average of 2 houses on each side, how far they are away from the lake, and that house could be no closer than, which makes sense. We've had a number of conditions on ZBA with that, and the people understood the problems with their neighbor and they just voluntarily moved their house back. But these are some of the concerns I have with this policy. I think it's too restrictive in certain areas and not restrictive enough in other areas. I don't like people further encroaching on property lines. I don't like taking away people's rights when they have a house and not be able to build on that footprint unless it's on somebody else's property. So these are some of my concerns. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. So we're gonna close public hearing. Scott, you want to walk us through? I mean, we've talked about this in quite a bit of detail at the
Yep.
last meeting.
So I'll just do, again, just a brief summary of how we got here. So, I mean, we had our first review of this with the Planning Commission on April 18th, 2024. This item was brought up by the ZBA just in an attempt to reduce variances. What has been happening is, you have been receiving variances at the ZBA, and your approval rate is very high. Because you have 90 to 98% of the lots in the LR district are non-conforming. And to be able to build on them at all, you would need to ask for a variance, because you have a required 20-foot setback. So, in an attempt to, again, variances aren't supposed to be, if anybody has ever gone to a variance training, they'll tell you, the first thing you'll learn at the variance training is that 90 to 95% of variances that come before you should be denied, because they're asking for exceptions to your laws. So, when that exception needs to be, because of a particular hardship, due to the size, shape, or location of the lot. And because you created a code where most of your lots that in this zoning district are narrow, and then you created a code that required a 20-foot setback. So making almost all of the homes come in and get variances to be able to build on those lots. And the ZBA has been making, and I think,
Yeah, I disagree with it.
yeah, I think that, 30. So yeah, 30 for FAR would be fine too for all lots, because again, it's going to be very unlikely that big lots use that 30%. And even if they do, it will be like Mushback Road. I mean, it's on 25 acres. I drive by it. It's so far away that I don't care how big their house is, but. So yeah, I think 30% is perfectly adequate. And then we could get rid of the confusing language and on those two. So that's on 30-348. Instead of have the unless the lot is less than an acre, we can just say lot coverage. The maximum lot coverage shall not exceed 30%. And the maximum on number 4, the maximum floor area shall not exceed 30%. And then get rid of the rest of that language. So again, what that does is, all that does is allows the larger lots to also have the larger FAR and lot coverage, which again, would be more unlikely that they would use that because they would have to have a lot of stuff, but.
Well, basically, we're just saying, I just want to, as I look at it, this is lot coverage, maximum should not exceed 20%. We're just saying 30% for everything.
What did you say? I couldn't hear you.
I'm looking at line 3 for lot coverage, right? It says, the maximum shall not exceed 20% unless it's less than 1 acre. We're taking the less than 1 acre out.
Yeah, I would take the less than 1 acre. I'd take the entire portion that's in red out and you would just say
30.
the maximum lot coverage shall not exceed 30%. So you're deleting the 20 and putting in 30. And you would do the same thing for the floor area ratio, but make the correction where it says floor area patio
Mhm.
into ratio because
Yeah,
there's
I
a
caught that spelling error.
yeah spelling error in there.
It's tough being perfect, eh, Scott?
So that's that, but
I like
um,
31 better than 30.
all right, let me continue. So we talked about this in April. This originally came to us from the ZBA to move forward and have the planning commission review this to eliminate some of the variances that they're seeing. Steve wasn't at that ZBA meeting where it was moved forward. And that, so we did talk about this in April and a few things came up in April when we discussed this as part of the planning commission. The first thing was to deal with the definitions of floor area and what floor area ratio is, and it is covered in there. I think, Mike, you brought this up about the bottoms of the lakes. And it is covered in those definitions, so those aren't included in the calculations. So areas where there's wetlands or regulated or non-regulated wetlands or bodies of water such as ponds or lakes are not included in your lot area calculations. So they're not included both in the lot coverage or the floor area ratio based on the definitions that are in the code. So we don't have to worry about that. I think the worry was that some lots have very large underwater areas and they'd want to use those to make their size of the house bigger. That's not how either of those work in our code. The second item that was brought up by the planning commission was that if you had an existing non-conforming structure on a lot, you wanted to allow them to rebuild it if they tore it down. And what I did is I looked through your code to figure out the section that would apply. And there was under your non-conforming structures regulations in 330-841 of your code, there was a current section that didn't allow that. And it was based on a 50% replacement cost calculation. And I have changed that to say, or I propose to change that to help with this problem, that a non-conforming structure which is damaged by any means, that would mean if you tear it down yourself, or you remodel it, or if you're because you're damaging the structure, obviously, by any means to the extent of more than 50% of the replacement cost shall not be reconstructed except in conformity with the provisions of the district in which it is located, unless the subject lot is a non-conforming lot of record in which no matter the cost of replacement of the non-conforming structure may be reconstructed as long as no new non-conformities are created. For example, if I put a for example in this, I don't love doing that in code, but the reason I did it is to try to clarify this for citizens that are reading the code to see how this would apply to them, just so I don't have to answer as many questions. For example, if there are non-conforming setbacks, the remodeled or replaced structure can only encroach into the setbacks in the same location as the existing structure. Or if there are non-conforming floor areas or lot coverage, the remodeled or replaced structure may decrease, have the same, but not increase the floor area or lot coverage of the existing structure. So what that means is if you tear down a house, you can rebuild it. If you tear down a house that's 1 foot from the property line, you can rebuild it 1 foot from the property line in the same location that your existing structure is, but you can't go outside of that area. So you couldn't extend it further or make it bigger or any of that. And then the other one is lot coverage and floor area. So if you tear down a house that has a 50% lot coverage or floor area, you can rebuild a house on the same property that has a 50 or 60% lot coverage. Again, I don't love these regulations because when you create when you create ordinances that have nonconformities, the way your codes are usually set up is that if something happens to that nonconformity, you don't allow it to come back because you want your code to be the thing that holds up. But there's nothing that says you can't do that. So this has all been given to Rob Thal, and he's reviewed the regulations, and he didn't have any concern with this. And actually, a lot of earlier codes, when we didn't have these 50% rules in them, and as people were seeing that non-conformings were just never going away, they started to put some sort of trigger in your code that would eliminate nonconformities moving forward into the future. And the 50% cost, I've seen a lot. I've seen 50% of exterior building walls. That's why if you drive through some communities, you'll see somebody just left a wall standing on their house. And it's because they're trying to get away from having to meet the code. So the problem I see with the cost too, a lot of times is it's the cost of the structure, not the cost of your property. And on lake lots, your structure's not super valuable. The land is really valuable. So 50% of your cost of your old cottage on a lake lot might be replacing the roof. Yeah, you know? So it is a tricky situation. So I don't hate doing this. I just see that we might not get rid of nonconformities moving forward into the future. The biggest concern is the floor area ratio and lot coverage because they would be able to move it around on their lot. So if I have 60% currently, maybe it's sitting right on the lake but I move it all the way back to the back of the lot. It's a different impact to somebody than if it's in the same location that it was in when you built it. So we could change that to say you can build the exact same footprint of the house, meaning volume footprint. And then they would have to basically build the exact same house in the exact same location, even if they're trying to get the same FAR. But I don't know many people that want to really do that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the map in Word. I haven't really much about Spring Lake, but at least on Kavanaugh Lake, I'm not Sure, there's too many candidates that would even fit that norm.
Well, that have over the FAR currently, what?
Yeah,
Yeah. So we don't have to include the FAR on lot coverage if you don't want to either. We could just have the setback requirements. And then they would have to, if their house is damaged by more than 50%, they'd have to meet the 30%, the new 30% lot coverage requirement.
when you calculate the floor area ratio, Scott, that's just enough, the first level, right?
Well, it's second level, but it's not currently in your code, it's not vaulted ceiling areas.
Mhm.
I did write that into my report as you had brought up additional comments regarding concerns with the existing zoning, and that's on my ticker for when we have our joint meeting with the PC, ZBA
Mhm.
and board to change the definition of floor area ratio to include vaulted areas. So the way I've seen it done in the past with floor area ratio is if you have an area that's over 17 feet in height, it's calculated twice. So that gets your vaulted areas into your floor area ratio also.
I mean, what does that really benefit does that provide though? I'm just. So if the way it is right now, it's just the first floor area ratio is just on the first story.
No, it's the second story also. It's anywhere that has a floor.
Okay.
It's just not vaulted areas. You had brought up concerns with vaulted areas at the last
I just wanted to double check on.
PC not being concerned.
Maybe sometimes they're vaulted and then they go after things get done.
Put them in. Yeah.
I'm not,
Again, that they should come in and get a building permit for, and at that time we would catch that they're over their floor area ratio and we'd not allow them to put that floor in.
they do it because they are over, they're close to their,
So they come in and ask for a variance,
well, they get a variance to build this great big thing without a floor in it.
right?
Do they come back and put a, in the process of building it? After you get all your inspections, you go in and put a floor in there.
Right. But I mean, we have that problem all the time. I mean, I like to bring up my minority report as a pure example of this. We can't catch people prior to them doing something illegal. If we catch them when they do it illegal, we would say, no, you can't do that. And they would have to come in and ask for a variance at that point. And then we would deny the variance based on, when you put this up, we told you you couldn't do that. Now, the thing that we can do is we can include in our floor definition of floor area ratio vaulted areas. So any area over 17 feet in height, you would then count double. You would count as 2 floors. So that would get rid of people coming in the future because they would build it and we would know. We would have already counted it into the floor area,
Yeah.
which,
The whole thing is they doing it on purpose.
yeah,
Yeah, they're doing it on purpose to get more square footage out of it. With the vaulted ceiling.
right.
What I'm getting.
But if we counted it as floor area ratio, there'd be no reason for them to do it on purpose.
What are
right?
what are they doing with it those, Tom?
What?
What are they doing with that vaulted ceiling? I mean, I'm just trying to.
Living quarters in it and stuff.
Illegally build a floor without any
You're
building
saying it's
permits
like
afterwards.
some over a garage typically, right? Yeah. Okay,
I'm not saying it's happened, I'm just saying.
all right.
And if it does happen, we do have code enforcement that we can do code enforcement on those types of things too. But again, I think, if you want, we can always correct for the vaulted ceiling requirement
Okay.
in the floor area ratio. And I mean, I have dealt with a floor area ratio calculation that you had to calculate vaulted ceilings in your floor area as a planner. In my Orinda, California code, that's how you had to do it. So you counted vaulted areas in your floor area ratio.
Like I said before, California's out there.
Hmm.
I thought you were the one that wanted to calculate it.
I do, but I don't like California.
Oh, all
You want to bring their stuff here.
I'm just trying to help you create a code that will calculate it for you so that we don't find people cheating in the future.
Hmm.
If we do calculate vaulted areas, you might want to raise your floor area ratio calculation. But in reality, a floor area calculation should be reducing the volume of the house because you have your lot coverage and your setbacks currently that are already limiting the size of the house. Your FAR only controls the volume. So by not having an area where a vaulted ceiling is, I could create let's say I only have 5,000 square foot FAR. I put in a 1-story house that has a 35-foot ceiling, because that's what I know, that's what your maximum height allowed is. And you have to count it as 5,000 square foot FAR. Even though from the outside, it looks like a 3-story home that is 5,000 square feet.
Hmm.
Well, it looks like it's 15,000 square feet from out the exterior of the house. But again, we don't see people building that way. You know, those are extremes. That would cost a lot of money for a lot of area that you wouldn't really use, and you would have to heat here in Michigan.
Right.
But again, I think, so what I was tasked with is allowing you to rebuild if you have existing nonconformities on your lots, on these lake lots. So not on all lots. And the reason that I used only on non-conforming lots of record is because if you have a conforming lot of record, meaning you're over an acre, you should be able to put the house where it's supposed to be on the lot. You shouldn't have to rebuild it in the wrong location. So that's the reason that I made it only specifically address non-conforming lots of record, is because I don't want everybody to be able to do this. If you have a 1-acre lot and just because your cottage was built in the 1930s and it's 1 foot from your neighbor, you tear that down, move it over and put it where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, but there's not many of them around.
No, there's definitely not very many large lots on the lakes.
Right.
So what, again, that code does is it preserves your existing setback, your existing floor area, and your existing lot coverage.
Hmm.
The other thing that is the next section of my report was just talking about those additional things. One of the additional things that Steve brought up also, I think we talked about, was creating an average of the adjacent properties to create a setback from the lake instead of having a strict setback requirement. And I have seen that before, but we can talk about that at a different time. So when we have our joint meeting, and again, this is on my tickler, it is up to 15 items now. And I've been here 4 months, 5 months, so that we're going to talk about at our joint meeting, and then you're going to prioritize which ones you want to have me look at over the next year. And you guys will be getting zoning text amendments at your meetings. So look forward to meeting more often to clean up some of the problems that are in the code currently. So again, yeah, you brought up the lakeside setback, you brought up the FAR and the vaulted ceiling and other things, but I say let's deal with what we were dealing with originally, which are the setbacks on these non-conforming lake lots. And then this section on the replacement of an existing non-conformity structure.
I'm okay with the non-conforming as you've written it up. I mean, we may want to reword some, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Just that happened. On the side yard setbacks, I mean, I think that's a tough one, right?
I don't, yeah. If you're you can go up to 5 feet. More I thought about it, Steve talked to me about it and stuff. I'm thinking this 40 feet or less, you can go 5 feet up to your property line. I'm not real gung ho about that.
It does only allow a 30-foot wide home on a 40-foot wide lot. So we could reduce it to 7.5 feet.
You bought this lot to begin with and you knew what you were gonna be able to put basically on there. You weren't gonna put a 30-foot.
You can currently put nothing on there.
Right.
You're gonna have them put a whatever. I'm not happy with that.
Hmm. I mean, there's a lot of them that are already closer than 5 feet out there, right? I mean, I'm one of them, right?
Could even get closer
You
to.
know,
Mine is,
Yeah,
I'm-
I'm just saying some of these where you have a little bit more on one side, you could go up to 5 feet now.
my neighbors are right on the line.
Mr. Sykes is, Dave
Mhm.
was
Mm.
actually on somebody else's property.
Well, grouse are, they're about a foot off the line.
yeah.
Yeah, but the other side could be different too.
Mm-hmm.
Go within 5 feet of the other side now.
Yeah, I mean, my neighbor's a foot off my line, right? I mean, it's just the way it is, right? I mean,
And it just depends how much frontage you have too, how wide your lot is too.
yeah, and if you look at the map, I got it here, I mean, they're all variable, right? There's no perfect rule for this.
Except for Feller, when he sold those off, those were what, 2-acre parcels?
Yeah.
Yeah, any new lots that are created would have to meet the requirements of the code, so.
Yeah.
Which are 1 acre and 150 feet wide. And then you would still be required to have a 20-foot.
I actually I don't mind this table. I think it's reasonable. Personally. Yeah, for the side yards. And part of it is there just isn't. I don't see a lot of new, I mean, since I've been out there, Tom, I mean, 90% of the households have been knocked down and rebuilt. I think Steve would probably attest to that too. So there's probably only a handful of places that are probably even gonna fall into this going forward, which begs another question, do we even want to bother doing it, given that the housing stock itself has generally been replaced over the last 25 years?
Well, this would impact that. So, right,
Yep.
this would be for any new home that's being built. Any addition that you're putting onto your home. So currently, if you have a 40-foot wide lot, you can't build anything. You have to ask for a variance and they have to make the findings.
So that's current practice, right? Okay.
Yeah, everybody comes in for a variance. You can't do anything without a variance.
On a 40-foot wide lot, yeah, because you have two 25-foot
Yeah.
setbacks.
Makes
so.
sense.
But Fellers were probably one of the few people out there that didn't have to come in for a variance.
Fellers are new lots, so they were created to the 1 acre lot minimum and 150 feet. So when you create a new lot as a part of the subdivision requirement, the zoning department and your planner reviews those lots to make sure there's adequate building size based on the existing code that's in place. So those lots were recently created, and when we approved that subdivision, we made sure there were buildable lot spaces. So when you overlay, so the way zoning works, there was no zoning back before we were a township. There was no setback requirements or anything like that. We became a township. Rod, do you know what year? In the 70s or late 60s was when most of these places became townships. You created an ordinance and you just overlaid it over a whole bunch of existing lots. And you create nonconformities because obviously you don't know that every lot's going to meet your requirement. When you overlaid the LR district, you created 90% non-conforming lots.
Hmm.
And then you created a setback that was very onerous, 20-foot setbacks on these non-conforming lots, because you based it off of a 1 acre lot size and 150-foot lot width.
Okay.
Which we know that, I mean, I wish I had an acre on a lake. So, what this code does is it tries to, like we talked about last time, it tries to create reasonable size homes on lots. And the reason you do that, and the reason that you have nonconformities is that, and you don't want them to keep going into the future, is that eventually then everybody will have a house that meets the required setbacks, because like Mike said, people aren't rebuilding these cottages on Kavanaugh Lake, they're tearing them down. They're not rebuilding the cottages on Crooked Lake, they're tearing them down and rebuilding new homes. And you want them to meet a required setback to get rid of the nonconformity so that the setback is fair on both sides. So you're no longer 0 foot from your one property and 10 feet from your neighboring property. But what Steve is concerned with is the existing house is there. So why don't we just, the existing house, people know what they're getting before they buy it. In reality, the way codes work is before I buy a house, I go and verify what the code requirements are, and codes are there. So 5 feet, I'm like, all right, 5 feet. 20 feet, you're like, oh, nobody can even develop on this lot anymore. So once that house falls down, I should have a vacant lot next to me. I would guess you would get sued over that if you didn't allow variances on all those lots of record, because you can't just restrict construction. What you would do is just allow the bare minimum construction. So you'd look at what your minimum house size is and you'd say, oh, they can only build 1,000 or 1,200 square foot house on that lot, because that's what the minimum size or the max minimum size they would build on it is. So we tried to create a code that had appropriate size setbacks for the size of the lot. And I would hope that everybody understands why we do that, so that we can reduce the burden on the ZBA to make the legally defensible findings moving forward.
So we.
I
walked
think the other thing we did on this code that I didn't mention didn't we also talk about the
Generators?
mechanical equipment?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was that one section on the mechanical equipment to allow mechanical equipment on residential properties such as ground mounted air conditioners, full house generators, and similar machineries may project up to 5 feet into a required setback as long as the equipment is no closer than 5 feet from the property line. So again, we're looking at all lots in Sylvan Township, not just lake lots now. And even on a lake lot, if you had an acre and you had a 20-foot setback, you could encroach 5 feet into that 20-foot setback with your mechanical equipment. So the mechanical equipment could be 15 feet from the side property line. Or if you were in agricultural, it would be different based on that. But if you were on a small lot that was 40-foot wide and you had a 5-foot setback, you could not encroach into the required setback with the mechanical equipment, because you can get no closer than 5 feet from the property line. And the reason that we put that into place was for safety reasons and egress on sides of homes.
Yeah, I mean, at least where I'm at, a lot of them are going in and they're 2-3 feet from the property line, right? And a lot of the people don't know they need it too.
Yeah. Just makes it hard, especially where you live. It makes it hard to get down to the lake for emergency responders if they have to get past equipment,
No, true.
especially if you have a fence up too.
I mean, I personally, Scott, I think all the things that you suggested are reasonable.
Mhm.
which is unusual coming from me, right? So particularly the people that already have a non-conforming home, I mean, it's, you know, you tell them they'll save a wall, right? And then you put all this money around it, you know, a defunct concrete wall, right? Because of some ordinance, right? I mean, it doesn't improve the housing stock of that township. That's for certain. On the floor area ratio, I almost want to go back to that one for a minute. So we got the lot coverage, right? So you were, unless the lot is less than 1 acre, then the maximum lot shall not exceed 30%. And we're basically saying 30% regardless of acreage size.
Yep.
Nope.
We're just gonna shorten it, make it simple.
Okay,
Sounds good to me.
okay. I didn't, I don't know, Cliff, did you have any other thoughts you want to throw at this?
Yeah, a little bit of feedback.
Okay,
Section F, talk about lots with multiple property lines. You talk about the lots in the plural, property lines in the plural, but actually line is singular. So you gotta clean that language up.
Section F on what,
Under the chart,
under the chart?
yeah, side yards,
So,
it's lots with multiple property line.
let me,
So you gotta clean that up. With frontage upon public or private streets or roads,
oh, yes.
shall have multiple front yards, except if the lot abuts a lake, then the lot shall have multiple roofs. That last conditional statement, that's the wrong kind of then. It's then,
Oh, yep, that.
just a minor cleanup.
multiple rear yards. Well, Scott, if I read this right, so the lake frontage is actually our rear yard in this definition?
Where are you reading?
I'm just, looking at the page 4 or 5. It says, C says rear yard not less than 35 feet. And then, and D,
No,
right?
in your code, on lakes, your front yard is the lakeside. Right, correct? I believe that's how your code works. So you have the not less than 50 feet, no fences shall be constructed in the front yard except those fences to be defined, to define lot lines not exceeding 3 feet in height. So although I don't believe you can have fences on lakes, so I would have to check your fence regulations on the lake properties, because this is, again, it's called LR, so it's very confusing to everybody because they want to call it lake residential, but it's actually called low density residential, and there are some other lots on Chisholm Road that actually are this designation that aren't on a lake. So,
So when you say front yard on number A, no fence shall be constructed in the front yard.
Lakeside.
So the lakeside, right? Except those fences to define lot lines. So my neighbor theoretically could run a 3.
yeah, I would have to actually have the fence regulations to be able to check if that's accurate or not, because I think your fence regulations say that structures can't be built within a certain distance of the lake, but I don't have the entire code in front of me.
Okay. And is there anything, I don't know if this is the place or time to talk about it. No, I got another question, but I'll take it offline. I don't think. Okay. Anything else, from your review? Tom, anything?
So again, is everybody okay with the non-conforming structures section also? Because, yeah, we're gonna make change, you're going to make a recommendation. It's going to be based, it sounds like it's going to be based on everything that we're proposing. So the proposed change to section 30-182, which is the change to allow the encroachment of the mechanical equipment, section 30.384, which has to do with low density residential, lot coverage, floor area ratio, and side setbacks. And then section 30-841, which is the non-conforming, the section to do with non-conformities. And if they are damaged by more than 50%, they can be rebuilt as long as they don't encroach further into the required setback and they're don't increase the lot coverage or floor area ratio. Again, so I could see that this being a concern that was brought up by maybe Tom and also Steve, where you currently have a 0-foot setback on Leah's side of the property and a 20-foot setback on the other side, and you tear down the house and you rebuild 0 foot on Leah's side, right? Only in the location where the existing house is, and then you go to 5 foot on the other side. Where if you required, like most codes do, when you tear down the house, you can only put it back up where it's allowed to be put back up, which would be, if, I don't know if her property is how wide they are, but it would be based on the width of the lot size. They would have to move it away from the side where they're tearing it down, that it's non-conforming.
But then wouldn't you typically, the FAR catch them to where they couldn't do that? Because they probably would be exceeding it.
Maybe, but who knows what their existing FAR was. So let's say their existing FAR was 60%. Again, you're moving around the location of the volume of the house, right?
Right.
By doing that, but maybe it wouldn't be a problem. You might want to put it in now, see how it works. If we do see that it is turning into a problem, you can always revise it. I don't love the section. That's why I keep bringing it up, but it's only because I'm a planner and codes are created so that you eliminate nonconformities, not allow them to persist forever. So I'm in my own head about that. But again, like I said, this has been reviewed by Rob Thal and he's okay with it, so.
Yeah, no, Scott, you've done a really nice job on this, so.
And I did have an example motion for you in my staff report also.
Yeah, I've got it here in front of me.
And you're just doing a recommendation to the board.
Correct. Andy, Leah, any thoughts on?
Pardon me?
Do you have any thoughts on this?
Whatever we can do to make things simpler for people living in the Lynn Lakes is a great idea.
Right. No, I hear that.
And I have an issue with the 5 foot here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right now, it doesn't bother me only because I'm not sure. Like I said, Scott said, maybe we gotta wait and see what happens. I don't know. You've already got someone 1 foot, right?
Things have been moving along okay, haven't they?
I don't know. I think what happens is those, the idea is to keep people out of as many ZBA meetings as possible, right? And so right now, anyone doing anything out there needs to go pretty much through the ZBA. So I personally don't have a problem with it.
I don't know, I feel the ZBA has been doing a good job and.
I'm not saying they're not. It's more to
I feel like
streamline.
we
the
should
process.
leave it alone, but
Yeah.
I
Okay.
agree. After hindsight,
What's that?
I agree with Leah.
Okay.
I kind of take the other approach. If 90 to 98% are non-conforming and, variances have become a matter of practice, that's a good signal that you need to address your ordinances. So I think we're taking steps in the right direction. We may have to adjust down the road, but variances as a matter of practice is probably not the best way to go about things.
Yeah.
I agree with Cliff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a perfect solution for this, right? So this is a step and, I think it's worthwhile to at least take the step and see where it takes us. So it sounds like we don't have a majority, but Leah and Tom would be opposed, but correct? Okay. So,
Somebody want to read the motion?
yeah, I'll read it. So example, approval motion, planning commission motion to recommend approve to the proposed zoning text amendment ZTA 24-002 to amend the zoning regulations, chapter 30 zoning regarding the setbacks, floor area and lot coverage on non-conforming smaller sites within the low-density residential zoning district, LR, section 30-3448, to amend the zoning regulations to allow mechanical equipment to encroach into required setbacks when appropriate, and to amend the zoning regulations, sections 30-182, to allow for non-conforming structures to be reconstructed with certain criteria. Section 30-841, because I discussed at tonight's planning commission meeting and as presented in the planning commission staff report, the zoning amendments comply with the master plan and will preserve the health, safety, and welfare of the community by allowing appropriate development of existing sites within the community. The proposed amendments are intended to allow appropriate development of existing non-conforming lots of record with structure similar in size and setbacks to the existing homes in the areas. The proposed amendments do not allow for any additional density. The zoning amendments create minimum setback standards to allow safe access around the structure, even on the smaller lots, in an attempt to preserve the appropriate health, safety, and welfare of the community. Okay. And do a roll call vote, Tom?
Get a second on that?
Pardon?
Did you get a second
I'm
on the
sorry.
motion?
Second,
Seconded by Cliff. We'll do a roll call vote. Tom? Courtney?
Yes.
yes,
Chair votes yes.
No,
Leah's no.
Yes.
And Sandy's yes, so the motion passes. Okay. Once again, this goes to the township board for approval and or for their recommendations. Okay, moving on with the agenda. So we've got election of officers. I guess we should have done this earlier in the year, but
Yeah, it says in the bylaws, the first meeting of the year.
meeting of the
You
year.
Missed it.
So so
We
I've
had
been the
some
chair.
turmoil at that time, so.
I think Steve was the secretary, correct, at one time, or yeah, been replaced. Okay. I'd stay on as chair if everyone's in support, at least through the end of the year. Is there any opposition to that? I guess I'm volunteering, for lack of a better word.
Courtney was vice chair, right?
Yeah, Courtney's vice chair.
So. what
You
about
okay with that,
Tom?
Cliff?
yeah, I'll do whatever. we
You
need to
fine?
do.
You're fine?
Yeah.
Tom, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so now Sandy, you okay with that?
Could you repeat? 'Cause, you know, I can't always.
Oh,
hear
I'm
you.
sorry. I'm trying. So I said I'd be willing to stay on as chair through the end of the year. I think Courtney, you're okay being the vice chair?
Yes.
Okay. So then we need to identify a secretary, all right?
It says in your bylaws that you're supposed
Yeah.
to have a secretary. I don't know.
But fortunately, the townships, we've got a note taker now, so it's not like back when Dawn was here where you had to write multiple pages. So I think it's more of a,
I think your duties as a secretary are to sign everything.
yeah, just to sign a report. So I don't know, Leah, would you like to be secretary?
Sure.
Okay. So I'll make a motion for myself as chair, Courtney as vice chair, and Leah as secretary. And a second.
Second.
Seconded by Steve. All in favor, say aye.
I-
Opposed, nay. Okay. Next item agenda is comments, concerns with the planning commission members. But just one point, I think, on this whole lake thing, because I know Tom and they had, I mean, And I think the ZBA's done a really good job over the years. Um, I think we can reduce some of the burden for some of the people out there. Tom, anything else from your side? No, Courtney,
None.
Cliff,
Nothing additional.
Sandy, anything from you? And Leah?
No.
No,
Gentleman addressed what I was gonna bring up, the dark sky ordinance.
okay,
I think we were, gotta do something about that.
yeah, no, it's,
Sorry, but
And if you could like talk to Chrysler about it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I.
no, last
had-
Friday night, it was really nice to have dark skies with the sky show going on, right? Where were you? You didn't see it? Why?
There was too many lights and.
Really?
No,
I can see it right over your house.
that, I know, that's what they said on the, and then I drove over to the park
Yeah,
and there was 100 other cars over there too. so-
really?
Cause I was in my pajamas, so I was.
Oh, you didn't get out of your car.
Definitely one of the quick things that you can do, like to help without having to change your code, because you do have standards like in your special use permits and in your site plan review that say things like the project shouldn't be a nuisance to the neighbors or shouldn't impact the neighbor. You have a lot of those discretionary standards, and you can put conditions on their projects like we did tonight that say at a certain time the lights have to be on a motion sensor or turn off completely. And that is just a common, it's usually one of my canned conditions on most everything that I've ever approved recently. And it's just because it's carried over with me, as I'm like, why do you need your lights on when you're not at the business? Just turn them off so your neighbors don't have to see them.
Right.
Um,
Plus it saves you money too.
yeah. Yeah, if you have a security light, security lights should be on motion sensors. Or you should have a way to turn it on when you're coming, because I'm sure the tow yard will be working all times of the
hours.
night.
Right.
So we want to keep the lights off as much as possible over there. But especially for the residents that is right uphill, because he's gonna be looking at the lights
Yeah.
constantly.
I
So,
have new neighbors and you talk about lights. Drive by some night on the lake.
Is this the blue lighthouse?
No,
Mm.
side of me. There, anything that didn't move, they've got solar lights on, so it's just like day. I mean, my bedroom is all lit up because it's a 2-story. And they've got these solar lights on every post and everything.
Is this
It's
just
on
recently
real.
they come in?
Yeah.
They just, are these runners?
Runners.
They're runners?
Mhm.
Well, get your BB gun out, Leah. No.
It's just, I can't believe it.
all right, that's on public record.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
My God.
Oh,
Even the dock, they've got them along the dock even. I mean, everything is lit up.
that's funny.
Oh my gosh, just unreal. I don't need lights in my bedroom.
Oh, so we'll let Sandy work with those
Yeah, right.
college students to get that ordinance.
Oh.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Second by Courtney, the meeting's over. Thank you. Oh, just a reminder, there's January 6th, we have the master plan update. from June 6th, yeah, June. 6th.
Yeah.
I may not.
May not make it.
Talk to him. I just.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 o'clock, early.
Yeah,
for
it
all
is.
the people.
It is early.
Okay for me.
You know, thanks everyone for your, this is a long meeting.